Hey, I'm back. And those of you that are following my journey in regards to the book read of the game, that's what it looks like. And it can be purchased on my website at consciouspress.net. Thus far, we've read 8 chapters. I want to get you guys off into the ninth chapter. Hey, let's do it. Chapter 9. Goldie stood out on the steps of Carla's condominium, wondering what type of evening he would encounter once inside. He reached out and rang the doorbell. Now Carla stood on the other side of the door and watched Goldie from her kitchen window as he pulled into the parking lot and parked. She didn't want to seem anxious, so she stood there for a few moments to regain her composure. She opened the door. He smiled at the sight of her. Hey, baby. Carla returned his smile. Hi, Goldie. I've been expecting you. On the inside, she took Goldie's hand and led him through the kitchen into the living room. She said, make yourself comfortable. He walked over and took a seat on the sofa. Now, Carla was wearing a pair of jeans that looked like they were painted on, and the t-shirt that she wore revealed her breasts in all their firmness, and her nipples stood out like eyes. Goldie thought, God, she's beautiful. Carla broke the silence as she walked over to the bar in the well-kept room. She asked, what will you be having? He eased back on the sofa, making himself a little more comfortable, and replied, well, now, I guess that would depend on what you have in stock behind the bar besides the obvious. She caught the pitch and smiled. Well, besides the obvious, beer, vodka, rum, gin, I have a nice cognac, sherry, several different types of wine, and a beautifully aged bottle of champagne for a special occasion. Goldie replied, well, personally, I don't believe there could be a more special occasion than a setting with me in it. Carla reached down behind the bar, along the back wall, and opened the small refrigerator where she removed the bottle of champagne from. Then she pushed the play button on the CD player beside the small refrigerator that was encased in a shelf of stereo components. Immediately, the room filled with the sounds of Smokey Robinson. Let me be your clock. And as she made her way around the bar carrying the bottle of champagne and 2 long-stem crystal glasses, she noticed Goldie making his way around the living room table in dance mode. The swaying of his hips, the displaying of arm movement, and working toward her in a two-step grind-like motion, kind of rolling his body. Carla's expression clearly revealed her shock. She froze and said, oh my God. Goldie met her in the middle of the living room floor, where he removed the bottle of champagne and the glasses from her hands. She watched him curiously as he walked over and placed the items down onto the living room table and made his way back over to where she was standing. He took her hands in his and looked down into her eyes and said, wow, baby, how did you know? I am definitely an oldies freak, and Smokey Robinson is one of my favorites. She smiled. I too love Smokey Robinson, and Smokey is my favorite. Goldie said, well, you shouldn't have no problem with a dance step like this one. He began the swaying of his hips from one side to the other. Carla felt herself blush with embarrassment as she stood there watching the movement of his hips. He raised her hands about shoulder high and looked down at her hips and said, come on, baby, work with me. As she began to imitate his dance moves, she looked up into his eyes and replied, okay, Goldie, I'm game. You got me. He stood there, holding her hands in dance mode, watching the swaying of her hips. He said in playful manner, that's it, baby. You got it. Carla broke out into light laughter. He pulled her into an embrace and kissed her on the forehead. At that moment, Goldie felt like if the world had just stopped, he would have been right where he wanted to be in the end. After dancing with Goldie, Carla excused herself for a few moments. She left the room to retrieve a tray of hors d'oeuvres that she had prepared for that evening. Goldie stood there in the middle of the living room floor, admiring her as she left the room. Then he walked over and retrieved the bottle of champagne off of the living room table and sat down on the sofa. When Carla returned to the living room, she placed the tray of hors d'oeuvres down onto the living room table. Goldie rose as she approached, and the two of them had sat down together on the sofa. He figured that he would get her tipsy. That way he could get the real woman out from behind the mask. After he had given the champagne bottle to once over, he popped the cork on the bottle and said, "Now this is an exquisite bottle of champagne." Carla smiled, revealing she was pleased that he was pleased. As he filled their glasses with champagne, he said, "Okay, it's obvious that we share the same taste in music and similar taste in the area of the grapes, wine in parentheses. Now you got me curious as to what we will find in each other that we share in the area of commonalities throughout the evening. We should drink the commonalities." They tapped glasses. That evening, the two of them had talked up a storm. Goldie toasted everything, and after a few trips to the bar, they both had their groove on. Now, Carla was the first woman that Goldie really felt that he could be himself around. But then again, Goldie thought it might be that damn liquor talking. In reality, he knew that what he felt was no more than the truth. But that was just how his mind worked. He questioned everything and believed you were dead when you stopped asking why. Goldie had learned to trust his heart long ago. He knew the mind spent a lot of time trying to manipulate it. Think about it. If you were ever in love with someone, it was in your heart, not in your head. And the things you take to heart, you'll die for. The heart is the center of a man's thinking, and Goldie knew that his heart would never steer him wrong. The evening went beautiful. There were no complaints on either end. They laughed and talked and had shared their points of views on a variety of different topics. The last commonality of the evening lay in protest novels concerning the black experience and situations here in this country. Richard Wright, Chester Himes, James Baldwin, etc. Goldie sat there on the sofa, knowing that this evening had to end. As he stood, he pulled Carla up beside himself and looked down into her eyes and said, "I had a wonderful time tonight." Carla smiled. "I did too." As Goldie started toward the front door to leave, Carla followed close behind. He faked a little stagger that seemed to be more real than fake. She grabbed him and asked, "Are you okay?" He turned back to face her. Their eyes met. He replied, "I'm fine." And the two of them stood there looking at each other for a few moments, and then she walked into his arms and hugged him. Goldie eased out of the embrace and said, "Hey, I better go. I'll see you in the morning. Oh, and pack an outfit." Carla asked, "Goldie, where are we going?" He smiled. "Trust me." She smiled. "I do, Goldie. I do." Goldie took her hand in his and led her to the front door, where they kissed, after which he disappeared out into the cool night air. Carla hung heavy on Goldie's mind that night. He knew he was in love with her. He also believed he would have no problem convincing her that she was in love with him too. Then he thought about how he would get her to be his wife and to give up everything she knew and understood and possibly her life if she chose to run away with him. Goldie had a plan, but he knew if he wanted to incorporate her into that plan, that it was going to take some time. Another thing that lingered in the back of Goldie's mind was all that they shared in common. He knew concerning infiltration with the Panthers, the oppressor sent in white women. With Malcolm X, the oppressor sent one of our own in. At that moment, he only hoped that it wouldn't be this woman that the oppressor had strategically placed into his life to bring him down. Meanwhile, Carla sat deep in thought about Goldie on the sofa in the living room. She fought as long as she could against what she knew to be true. Finally, she admitted to herself that she was head over heels about Goldie. After this, she retired to her bedroom for the evening. And that's chapter 9. Hey, we're going to get to chapter 10 soon. I'm at you guys. Hey, have a good evening. As always, love you, Tim.